Michael let out a loud curse and stared at his computer screen. For the past hour, he had written and rewritten the same paragraph. If his computer wasn't so expensive and important to his work, he would have trashed it a long time ago. At the rate he was going, it didn't look like he was going to finish his book anytime soon. His publishers definitely wouldn't be happy to hear about that. Michael leaned back in his chair and tilted his head to the ceiling. Before he hit the 5th chapter, the writing was going so well. It now felt as if his path was blocked by a solid wall. None of his characters were talking to him, and he had no idea what to write next. He looked down when his phone began to ring. It was his mother. Normally when Michael worked, he allowed his calls to go to voicemail. But today, he welcomed the distraction. "Hi, Mom," he said. "How are you?" "I'm not well," she said. His mother wasn't interested in making small talk and got straight to the point. "I have cancer, Michael." "Cancer?" Michael repeated. The word sounded foreign in his mouth. "Yes," she said. Until his mom retired, she worked as a surgeon at the hospital, and she was used to talking about diseases in clinical terms. So when she began to explain her condition, she sounded detached. "They found a tumor," she said, "and after doing a biopsy, they've determined that it's cancerous. I go into surgery tomorrow morning at 10. Michael started to get angry. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" "What would you have done if you knew?" his mom asked. Michael became silent. There wasn't anything he could do since he wasn't a doctor. He told her that he'd be in the waiting room tomorrow, whether she liked it or not. The following day, he was at the hospital at the appointed time. He was plagued with worry and had barely gotten enough sleep last night. He walked through the main floor and was about to pass the florist shop. On impulse, he popped into the store and bought his mom a bouquet of flowers for after the operation. He found his father already in the waiting room, and Michael could tell that he was grateful for his presence. Several hours later, the surgery was finished, and they followed the porters to a new room. When his mother was settled in the hospital room, he was finally able to get a good look at her, and what he saw made his heart sink. His mom was a physician for close to 40 years. Michael and his dad had been after her to retire years ago, but she wanted to continue working and serving patients even though she was pushing 70. It was only when his father's health worsened that his mom was forced to retire. If anything, he expected his dad to land in the hospital, not his mom. Michael placed the flowers on her bedside and waited patiently with his father for the anesthesia to wear off. He hoped that when his mom finally woke up, the colorful flowers would be the first thing she saw. After several minutes, the doctor entered the room. He explained that they removed the tumor, but because of the complexity of the surgery, she had lost a lot of blood. As a result, she would need to stay at the hospital under observation. Michael felt an odd mix of relief and fear. The surgery was a success, but the threat of death still lingered. He knew death was a part of life, but he loved his mom and didn't want to lose her just yet. When his mom finally awakened, she looked tired. "Did they get it all out?" she asked. "They did," Michael said, "but you'll be staying here for a while longer." She nodded and then closed her eyes again. The nurses couldn't tell Michael how long his mom would stay in the hospital, but fortunately he lived in the same city as his parents, and he was able to visit her every day before work. And each day, he walked into the flower shop and bought her a bunch of beautiful flowers. After a week, his mom seemed more alert. She smiled when he entered her room, but that smile dropped when she saw the gift in his hands. "You're buying too many flowers," she said angrily. Her words stung. "Everyone likes flowers," he said, his tone defensive. "They're just temporary and a waste of money," she said. "Why don't you do something more useful with the money instead?" Michael stayed for a bit, but he decided to cut short his visit. He wandered over to a park nearby and sat on a bench. Although he would never admit it to his mom, her words had wounded him deeply. He understood her blunt nature, but her refusal of his gifts felt like a rejection. Maybe he could never be a good enough son to her. That line of thought depressed him. But he couldn't dwell on his self-pity for too long. He needed to get back to work. The publishers were still waiting for his book. Just before he returned home, he remembered to stop in at the grocery store to pick up some milk and eggs for his dad. As he stood in line to pay for the items, he observed a young mother in front of him. She was struggling to hold her crying child. At the same time, the cashier was telling her that she was $12 short. The woman was clearly embarrassed. "Stop it, Ryan," she said to her son. There was frustration in her voice as well. Michael watched as the young woman began to pick up items out of her basket. At that moment, his mother's words rang in his head. Suddenly, he understood what she meant. "Wait," Michael said. "You could leave those things in the basket." He handed the cashier a $20 bill. "Oh, you don't have to do that," the young mother said, shaking her head. "We'll be okay without those items." "No," Michael insisted. "I want to do this." The stranger was overwhelmed, and she thanked him before leaving the store. "That was a good thing you did," the cashier told him as she checked out his groceries. He smiled at the cashier. "The young lady looked like she needed some help," he said. Michael walked out of the store feeling light. Earlier, he was offended by his mother's rejection of his gifts. But the real gift was discovering that his mom was right after all. He didn't need to waste money on flowers, since their blooms would eventually fade and be tossed away. However, if he gave the money to a person in need, he was contributing to their well-being. And that, in the end, was most useful. What did you guys think of the story? Please comment in the comment section below. I can't wait to read your answers and discussions. Thanks for watching! And don't forget to like and subscribe to get the latest stories to warm your heart. Until next time, bye!